an immediate plummet, but we should expect that we can't go much higher from here unless something changes based on this model, this method of valuing the stock market. The issue is to move from a +3 back to a 0 without the Federal Reserve balance sheet changing, meaning the stock market alone is what's moving. If the stock market were to move from a, what would be a measurement of 3 down to a 0, the actual price, movement is substantial, highly substantial, meaning people would notice something like that, because we're not just talking like a couple down days in the market in a given week, and we're not just talking a couple down weeks. Like, we're talking people would notice, looking at their quarterly statement, a substantial decline in their retirements and their brokerage accounts. And to me, I'm considering how, if that's the case, just off this alone, when I say off of this alone, I'm saying just based off of the system itself. If the stock market is constrained by the Federal Reserve balance sheet, just the very nature of things, then, that pullback that we would expect to see would be substantial, and it would need a catalyst. Like, when I say a catalyst, I mean from this perspective of people, the people that are investing in this economy, the citizens. We would want to know why. You would want to know why has your 401k suddenly dropped 40 or 50%, and if the only reason why is because we're bound by this, basically this model, this valuation model, or whatever you want to consider, this risk model, this assessment of risk, in the market in terms of the Federal Reserve balance sheet, that would be the reason. That would be kind of like the reason that I guess alone that we would be required to accept. And I don't. This is where I need somebody to talk to me. Talk to me. What's going on there? Why are things playing out the way it is? Because from my standpoint, I'm looking at this, which is a black swan event. Hang on. Damn it. Alright, sorry about that. From my standpoint, this is what I'm looking at. By the end of 2019 and early 2020, I'm seeing a market that's overstretched, showing a black swan type price reading on the S&P 500, highly unusual price reading, meaning I would not want to buy the S&P 500 with my enemy's money, because if somehow I had my enemy's money, because I know that most likely that money's going to dwindle, basically. I'd be buying at a point where it's not like buying here, sure, like you're not buying opportunity, you're buying a risky situation early 2019, by mid 2019. That's what I'm reading. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm understanding. I have no knowledge of coronavirus. I have no concern over coronavirus. And it's a non-issue to me. It's just I know that I'm not really interested in buying the stock market around this period of time. All of a sudden, we get the declaration, and that's what this plummet is representing from 2019, the end of 2019. And then that's not, that's kind of through mid 2020, but all of that decline that you're seeing, that's that mean reversion that we would see. Anyway, like regardless of coronavirus, like I just feel like that was gonna happen, you know. So, from my standpoint, coronavirus it's a black swan event. Pandemics they're part of history. They happen, but they're highly rare. To me, it is like seeing a unicorn. Okay, that's what I've been comparing when I try to explain this to people. So what we have here is a black swan event. We'll say the S&P 500 relationship to the Fed total assets. That's like a leprechaun, okay? This graph right here is like looking at a freaking leprechaun when you're up here in these ranges. As we walk into 2019, mid 2019, the US stock market is like looking at a freaking leprechaun. Rarely seen type of measurements and risk. On top of that, we've got a global pandemic that just suddenly comes out of nowhere, which is like a unicorn. So what I've been trying to explain to people is like seeing this pandemic right now, it's like seeing a leprechaun riding a fucking unicorn. Highly unusual. On a given day, if you saw a leprechaun, you'd be highly impacted. You'd say that like that's rare. That's really weird. I can't believe I just saw a freaking leprechaun. On a given day, if you saw a unicorn, you'd be like, that was a really strange day. That was a great day. I saw my first unicorn. I've never seen one of those before. Well, here, these times that we're living in right now, it's like, in my opinion, seeing a leprechaun riding a unicorn. Highly unusual day. What are the odds of this shit happening, over the past, looking back over the past, 10 plus years? What are the odds of this happening at the same time? Is it just a coincidence, or is there some kind of relationship there? Is there some kind of situation there that maybe we're just not aware of? We don't know. And that's my problem. And now, we see since... let me back up because I'm leaving something out. So before we even start talking about coronavirus, or before we even we see that there's going to be a pandemic that is a perfect reason for the market to crash, let me explain this, that as we approach these excessively high levels in the market, shown here, according to this Z-score model, or Z-score graph, I'm sorry, as we approach that 3, there are 2 things that could happen. Assuming the Fed does nothing, assuming the market behaves the way it just maybe naturally should, what would likely happen is a mean reversion, like I said. The other thing that could happen to make that graph go back towards 0 is if the Fed increases its balance sheet. If the S&P 500 doesn't move and just stays exactly where it is, if the Federal Reserve increases their balance sheet enough, that graph would drop back down to 0, okay? It would reset. There would be a great reset. So as the Federal Reserve, were to do something like that, it would be stimulating the economy. It would basically do that. There would be a sudden, I'm sorry, wrong graph. It would basically do that. You would see a huge expansion in the monetary base, a huge uptick like you saw in response to the crisis over here where they bailed out the economy. But you would see, just a huge acceleration in the amount of money that's entering the economy, the amount of money that's showing up on the Federal Reserve balance sheet, because they're creating it out of thin air. Now, the issue I have with that response, and what's going on here is that they can't just do that. Everyone, it's like, I mean, use logic here. You can't just print trillions of dollars to shore up the economy when you know you need it. Because again, around here, as we're approaching, from these one risk levels to the twos to the threes, you're starting to get to a point where you need it. The U.S. economy is not growing organically enough to support this accelerating stock market, or this U.S. stock market is growing too fast, and the U.S. economy is not growing with it. So there's risk brewing. However you want to look at it, there's risk brewing here in this chart. To fix that, from the standpoint of the Fed, how do you fix that? How do you print trillions of dollars and justify it for the citizens? How do you tell people that your 401k, it's actually at quite substantial risk, and there's probably going to be a huge correction any moment now, because just that's part of systematically how it works. Or in order to keep this illusion going and spur the next 5-10 years of bull market like we did here, we could just print the trillions of dollars. But you got to sell that idea. In my opinion, this is where the discussion comes in. Explain to me what I'm missing, what am I misinterpreting, what am I theorizing, what am I conspiracy theorizing, whatever you want to say. I did not graduate from the financial economics program that I was in, but the courses that I did take, I got good grades on. The courses in financial, statistical forecasting and mathematical economics and econometrics. Those courses sucked. They were boring and very confusing. But I stuck through them, and I definitely did learn something. I've got the papers and the grades to show it. These types of research papers that I wrote or I've read and came up, models of my own, and they were graded and they were sound. It was sound reasoning for the things that I had said in those research papers. But at the same time, I don't have full confidence in myself to say that I know for a fact what's going on. I just know that I'm a relatively somewhat educated person, enough to notice something like this and know that something seems unusual. What seems unusual is that the Fed would need a catalyst. The Fed would need some kind of reason to print all that money in order to shore up the economy and basically enable another, like I said, 10 years of bull market run. Because if they didn't do that, if the market just collapsed and this graph went back to zero on its own, the economy, could grow organically on its own, and we can start making new fresh highs. But I don't know what that would look like. I don't know what, I guess, that natural growth kind of scenario would truly look like, because it didn't happen here, and I don't think it happened after that crash in 2001 or 2002. That's not shown in this graph. But what we have here is the perfect catalyst. The perfect storm came into the picture, where just as we reached that peak score of a +3 in September, COVID-19 came. COVID-19 came into the picture, and now all of a sudden the economy is going to crash. There's going to be shutdowns, and there's going to be the need for another major bailouts. We're not out of this yet. And that's what you're seeing here. That drop in the line, that's the expansion. the expansion and the market dropping at the same time, but they definitely short up the economy and prevented the market from absolutely collapsing.